Hello everyone. We're going to be covering today photogrammetry with ReCap Photo from Autodesk. To do that, I'm going to walk you through the entire process, and we're going to talk about how to get an Autodesk student license, how to download ReCap Pro, which includes the installation of ReCap Photo, how to take photographs for photogrammetry, how to upload those photographs, how to download the 3D model, how to edit that model in ReCap, and ultimately how to edit that model in Rhino 3D. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just recommend you go to Autodesk Student. Autodesk Student on Google here you can search for is a free website. They provide lots and lots of different softwares for students and academic licenses. If you don't have an account, you're going to go ahead and need to make one. You can do that by signing in and signing up. But if you do have an account, you can just scroll on down here to ReCap Photo. It's one of the products they have. You can see they have many, but we're going to want ReCap Photo Pro. And with this, you can say I already have an account, so I'll sign in. That's me. That's my password. They're going to go ahead and two-step verify it, so I'll pause the video for a second, verify, and get back in. Alright, so after that, I'm back to the login page here, and I can specify what I want to download. So we're here in ReCap Pro. I can say I want 2019, sorry. I want 64-bit operating system, and I can specify my language. As soon as I do this, I will be given a license for the software. I'm not going to do it because I already have several licenses. Once you fill out all three of these boxes and you get 3 green check marks, you'll be able to click the Install Now button. I don't recommend that you click the Install Now. This button tries to install the program from the web, and I've had problems in the past, over the past few years, installing this way. The way I recommend you install it is to click all 3 of these things. It will give you a serial number, password, everything you need for the software, and then to come up to the icon of the user account here, go to Manage Products and Downloads. This will bring you to a web page with all of the software. And then I can scroll down here and go to ReCap Pro. I can go to the 2019 downloads. You can see those are the serial numbers I need. And instead of clicking Install Now, I can go down and go through Browser Download. This will let me download the raw files and install them locally from my machine. I've had problems doing the other techniques in the past. They should work fine, but they don't for me. So I always download the software. Once you download and install ReCap, it'll install ReCap Pro and ReCap Photo. By opening ReCap Photo, you can see that you're left with the dashboard. The dashboard lets you import new 3D objects, load a model that's already been compiled, or sign in to view your projects through Autodesk 360. For this demonstration, I'm going to create a new object. By clicking this, I'm going to be forced to sign in because we're going to be using our account to render. Again, I've got another second authentication. I'll be right back. And with that, I'm logged in. I can create a new project by dragging and dropping photos or clicking to browse to my photographs. So let's take a minute to look at what photographs we need for this job. Here you can see 140 photos that I took at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And some of them are very close, some of them are very far. There's a few rules that we need to follow when taking photographs. One is to never zoom. By zooming in and out with your camera, you change the metadata, and ultimately the photogrammetry software will have a hard time understanding where things are. The second rule is to take all of the photos at the same time of day. You can take several photos from the similar camera at the same site and stitch them together, but if we take some photos in the morning and some photos at night, it's going to be hard for the software to recognize what's exactly the same and match things up. What you can see here with my first photograph is I took an establishing shot, a picture that encompasses the entire facade. Then I can look to the left, look to the right, I can look up and look down, and I can just move a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right at a time. by kind of moving maybe 10, 15 feet at a time, I get a different vantage on the subject, and I'm able to take a lot of pictures along a lot of different angles. Ultimately, I move in much closer to the project, panning up and down, up and down, up and down, so that I get all sides of the columns and all sides of the facade. And by moving in closer, I get higher resolution textures, something like this, which gives me a really good image for the texture of the stone. You can also see that here I'm looking at some reflective glass with some wires and ironwork in front. That will be a problem for the photogrammetry software, but nothing that we can't go ahead and proceed without. Here again, large bars over the windows makes it hard for the software to figure out what truly is in 3 dimensions, but ultimately our textures and resolution look pretty good. Even in getting close here, I'm able to get some of the details that make their way into the final model. So with all of these photographs, I can take them, drag and drop them here into the ReCap photo software. Sorry, apparently drag and drop isn't working. I'm going to click. Here are all my photographs. Shift click down. You can see there's 100 photographs I've selected. We're limited to 100 photographs exactly with an academic license. If you put in more photographs, you can select which ones to get rid of. Then I can click Create and name this project. So we'll call this PMA New. For this example, I'm not going to start a new project because this would just upload everything. But I'll cancel out and go back to my dashboard. Get out of this. Cancel this project. Yes. You can see that once you've done that, you'll see the photos upload here in your My Cloud Drive. They'll sit there at 1% for a while. It takes a little bit for the cloud servers to start processing the model. Ultimately, I can click Download from Cloud and have this project brought locally onto my desktop. It should automatically appear here next to My Computer, but I can also load a model. By loading a model, I'll go to the project folder. This is 2018 with the tutorial, PMA facade, ReCap. You'll end up with a file like this. You can see it's about 300 megabytes, and it opens up here in ReCap Photo. This model now needs a little bit of attention in ReCap. By right-clicking, I can rotate around in 3D. By middle-clicking, I can pan, and the scroll wheel can also zoom. The left click lets me orbit my camera, which can help me get the thing into the correct position. What I see here is pretty good. It's fairly flat on the terrain, but to ensure that, we can come over to the model settings, pick the transform model, and pick a surface that represents our up direction. So if I say something like that, the model will reorient itself. I can click Apply, and now my horizontals are a little bit flatter. If I needed to, I could also transform manually with this gimbal and turn things manually this way. We'll close that. Another option I can do is to edit the file and look to fill holes. You can see here the wireframe, and by rotating around, I can click a region where holes need to be filled. Let's see here. Pick the wrong one. Let's try that one more time. Fill holes around here. And we can do flat or smooth. I'm going to pick smooth, which will try to blend this mesh back together. You can see it's filled there. We can do another one on this side, and we can try flat. This is just a coarse way to fill in that mesh. And if you can see here, it picks the surrounding color and meshes it through, but clearly it's been a patch. While we're there, we can look at the different visualization mechanisms to do a wireframe, which you can see there, a solid model, which you can see all of the noise and problems on the reflective glass. We can do textured with wireframe, so you can see all of the polyfaces. We can do an X-ray, which shows us some of the density and kind of the mesh normals to make an outline. Most standard is just textured, which gives us our materials and geometry. One other aspect I want to talk about within ReCap is to use the retypologize, and we can decimate a mesh. Right now we're at 3.7 million polygons. We could choose to reduce this mesh to 2.5 million polygons, eliminating 33% of the baseline figure. By clicking decimate, I'll have to let the software run for a few minutes, but we could end up with a much smaller file size. We could keep going and do something much smaller, 1.25 million, and get rid of nearly 2/3 of the data. I'm not going to run this right now, but it is helpful to try to do a little bit of cleanup here in ReCap. Ultimately, we're going to want to take this mesh to Rhino 3D. So after making any edits here, I'm going to come down to Export, Export Model, and make sure my settings are set up under Advanced as an OBJ. You can see currently I've got the full mesh, 3.7 million polygons. The textures I'm rebaking, essentially just mapping those UV coordinates with the diffuse map. And we're going to keep super high resolution 8K textures. We'll generate them by diffuse color. We won't be working with displacement and normal for this example, and then I can click Export. Jumping over now to Rhino, I'm going to navigate to where that OBJ file was saved. With this file, there's also a material file and the texture file of all of those diffuse materials. By opening the OBJ in Rhino, we can import it with its standard settings, and we're expecting a fairly large mesh to be brought in. It'll take a couple seconds, but it'll appear right here at the origin. As long as we're close to the origin, we'll be good in Rhino 3D. I can see now that it's shown up here in Rhino, and in my perspective view, I'll zoom selected, make my perspective full screen, and go into rendered mode. Probably the nicest way to look at the file. You can see there I've brought in my facade into Rhino, but I have some parts that I want to edit out. So one thing I'm going to do is create a plane. I'm going to tell that plane to be vertical. It's a little slow here in rendered view. So as soon as I get the opportunity to, I'm going to jump back into just shaded. It'll make the process of editing the mesh much faster. Alright, so I've jumped back to shaded view. Let's try that one more time. Plane. I will tell that plane to be vertical. I'll draw the plane here on the mesh, dragging back and dragging up. You can see right now I've left with a plane that doesn't make too much sense, but by dragging it much taller than the mesh and looking for rotation commands, I can move it into position. Then I can go ahead and check in my rendered view to make sure I have it exactly where I want. Say somewhere around here where I can crop out the main piece of the facade. I'll make a copy of the mesh, or sorry, a copy of the plane, and be able to crop the other side. Here's that copy of that plane. Going back to shaded mode, I'm going to use mesh split to split this mesh with both of these planes. It'll take a few seconds because it needs to compute new triangulation of the mesh, but after it's done, we'll be able to delete the left and right hand side of the unwanted data. And after a few seconds, we can delete the left and right hand side, the vertical planes, and leave ourselves with just kind of the pertinent piece of the mesh. Obviously, we'd want to go in and remove some of the sky and keep refining this. We could put a plane down here and crop the front so that we're left with just the facade. But that's the technique of taking up to 100 photographs, bringing them into ReCap Photo, working with a mesh there, downloading that mesh, and editing it here in Rhino 3D. I hope that helps. Good luck.